We got cut up. All right, we got a cut. How you guys like it? Not bad. All right, happy Sunday. Just got back from church, and I got home and I was like, you know what? Let's talk about breaker blocks. So who wants to talk about breaker blocks, guys? All right, I hope you've been paying attention, taking notes. We're almost done with confluences. Honestly, not really. We're not almost done with confluences, but it'll all be worth it. So make sure you're taking notes. Make sure you're on the chart, okay, marking out each confluence that we go over. And if you need help getting on a chart, just you can message me privately. I'll answer. I'll get you set up with a paper account. And then once we're all good and we got our strat down and we're profitable on paper, we're going to get you guys into funded accounts and we're going to start printing money. Okay. So today we are talking about breaker blocks. Now, what is a breaker block? Ooh, what's going on, man? All right. What is a breaker block? So it is very similar to an order block. A lot of people think of it as a failed order block. Okay, so let's draw a downtrend. What is a downtrend? What is a downtrend? A downtrend is lower highs and lower lows. Okay, so this is the downtrend, and this would be the breaker block. Okay, so if I mark it out like this, it'll just be easier. Breaker block, breaker block. Okay, but let's focus on the breaker block before we change direction. Okay, so we are in a downtrend, right? We sweep sell side liquidity here. Bing, boom, break structure here. There we go. We have our order block, right? Because what is an order block? The move before we change direction, the move before we sweep liquidity that ends up changing direction. This is a breaker block. So how does a breaker block work? In the simplest way that I can explain it, breaker blocks are often used just like a fair value gap. Okay, so in all of these instances, right, we're making lower highs and lower lows. And what were we able to do here? We had more selling power. So we were able to sell off. Okay, then we retrace. What do we do here? We had more selling power. We were able to sell off. Same thing here. What do we do here? We had more selling power. We were able to sell off. Okay, now what happens when we plow through this? We break structure. That means there was no more selling power in this zone to continue us lower. So similar with a fair value gap, there's a lack of selling power, lack of sellers. Okay, so when we see a retracement into this breaker block, similar to a fair value gap, and we start to see retracement off of it, right? We already did it once, so why would we try to go against the trend and do it again? We have lack of selling power here, so we're not going to sell here, okay? Because we already had a lack once, so the sellers don't just randomly show up. Okay, we had a lack of selling power here. We come back and we retrace this breaker block and we start rejecting off of it. What are you going to look for, right? You're going to look for a long off this breaker block with stops at the swing low, right? And take profit, would look for either unfilled gaps or buy side liquidity. Okay, now let's go over this. We're in an uptrend, which everyone likes uptrends more, it feels more green. Okay, we're in an uptrend, which is higher highs and higher lows. Terrible drawing. Higher highs, higher lows. Uptrend, right? And then we break structure. So our breaker block, right, is right here. Right? Because this is where we had lack of buying power to keep this price up, right? Because we broke structure right here, which means we are no longer in an uptrend, right? This is where we start, where we talked about when we sweep liquidity, and we talked about this in a break of structure. When you break structure, you go from an uptrend, right, higher highs and higher lows, to lower highs and lower lows. So it's all coming together because, right, we're making lower highs and lower lows. And what would we tap into? We tapped into the breaker block. So the breaker block, let me put that back up, right, is just an imbalance. It's a lack. In this case, we're in an uptrend, so it's a lack of buy orders because we broke through it and we disrespected it. We had a break of structure, which means there is a lack of buy orders to keep this price up. So when we come back and we retrace into it, right, it's a good chance that we still don't have enough buyers here to push this price higher, and that we're going to tap into it and sell off. Okay, so that's a breaker. Breaker blocks are super simple, just very similar to an order block. Let's look on the chart, see if we can find an example on the chart, right? Because the charts are much less pretty than my awesome drawings. Let's find an example here. Let's find a clear example for you guys. Charts are looking crazy right now. Whoa, what is going on? What is going on, man? All right, whatever. Let's just find a simple breaker block here. Okay, so any reversal, right? That's what we're looking for. We're looking for a downtrend. What? We're a downtrend? Okay, we go to an uptrend. So let's look at this example right here. Okay, we are in a simple downtrend, right? So we are making lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs. And then what do? We break structure, but instead of just shooting to the sky, right, before we skyrocket, we break structure here and we retrace, right? Retrace, then we end up going up. So it's very rare that we just shoot up, right, without any confluences, right? But then we go up. So let's look at why we change direction here. Okay, ready? We're in a downtrend. Lower lows, lower highs, right? Simple stuff. Right here, we break structure, okay? Right there, we break structure. So let's look at where the order block is and where the breaker block is. Let's get a rectangle, okay? So our breaker block, right, is this high. We'll go here. Okay? This is the move before, and actually, if you want to do this, let's do it on the retracement. Okay? Okay. Now let's see how price reacts off of it. Oh my god! All right, sorry. So, as we can see, we broke through, right? We finally made our push to the upside, but instead of just keep going up, right, what do? We retested this breaker block. We saw if we had any more selling power here. We didn't push lower, right? Okay, so we ended up going up, right? We tested again, saw if we had any selling power here, see if we pushed lower, which we pushed a little lower, right? We went back into this zone again, saw if we had any selling power here, see if we could push lower, and we didn't. So we saw that there was still a lack of sellers in this zone, and we started making higher highs and higher lows. Higher highs and higher lows. So what would our setup be here? We got in a long position here. Say on this break of structure here, we could, which would be right there, we could put our stops to below this zone. We could put it to the swing low, and we could target buy side liquidity. So we could target here, we could target here, we could target here. Let's see what we could have got on this trade. We could have targeted this buy side, this buy side, this buy side. We're hitting all of these. We could have targeted this buy side, this buy side, this buy side, full buy side. And look at that. What is that RR there? I mean, you would have been in this trade for a fat minute. And by the way, you could have gotten more. But that is a 1 to 5.6 risk to reward ratio. Okay, that's insane. That's all because of the lack of sellers at the breaker block. That's all that was. We had a lack of sellers at the breaker block. So a breaker block, you can think of it as used like a fair value gap, to where you saw that you had a lack of either buyers or sellers in that trend, right? And we started breaking through it. And then you can use it as, okay, we retested this area, and then we're going to continue in that direction. All right, so that is what a breaker block is. It's really, really, really simple. Let me draw it out one more time. Okay, we're in an uptrend. Okay, then we break structure, downside. This right here, this zone right here is the breaker block. Okay, we come and retest this breaker block. We see if we have any more buying power that could push us any higher, because we already saw one time that we didn't have enough. Okay, we bounce off of this breaker block. We see we still don't have the buying power, and we continue lower with our lower highs and lower lows. Okay, that is what a breaker block is. So you can add that to your strategy soon enough. Once you get to the EMA portion of these videos, we will be talking about how we use all these in our strategy, and how we use our EMA levels to actually print money. So make sure you're still tapped in. Go mark out some breaker blocks on your chart, and then we'll get you in the next video.